Lathan Watts serves as Vice President of Public Affairs for Alliance Defending Freedom. In that role, he's overseeing the development and execution of strategic communication plans for the expansion of ADF's mission into state legal advocacy efforts, collaborating closely with other ADF teams. Prior to joining ADF, Watts spent nearly 20 years in various roles in the political, public policy, and nonprofit sectors. He also served 4 years as a city councilman in Louisville, Texas. He earned his Juris Doctorate from the University of Mississippi and his Bachelor of Arts in History from Harding University. Welcome, Lathan.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Well, it's been about 2.5 years. I guess it was the episode 166. We were talking about court packing, and you were here. And now you've come back. You've got a case at ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom, that hits very close to home for people who watch Economic War Room. I mean, we are focused on how economic weapons are being waged against us from foreign enemies, but sometimes from domestic enemies. And in this case, it looks like people are losing their bank accounts because of social or political beliefs. That sounds a lot like Chinese social credit scores.
Unfortunately, yes. Our founders were certainly concerned about the concentration of power, particularly at the federal government. But when you combine concentration of power at the federal government level with the concentration of power in the financial and tech sectors in our country, if those two entities are working together, it presents a huge threat to liberty. I mean, basic access to basic financial services is essential to everyone in this country. And to be denied access to that based on religious beliefs or political beliefs is certainly un-American. And if the federal government is involved directly or indirectly, it's unconstitutional as well.
Well, that goes back to the founding and the writing of the Constitution, because the whole issue of whether there should be a national bank, the control of money has been central to the control of liberty from the very beginning. Life, liberty, property, which includes money, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. The founders knew that being able to access money is the kind of the opposite of the World Economic Forum. You'll own nothing and be happy. Right. No, they actually said that property was intimately connected to the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what we've seen with some of the largest banks in the country is this phenomenon of debanking, and based on what appears to be a bias against certain viewpoints or religious beliefs or political beliefs. Our most current client dealing with this is a nonprofit, a Christian ministry called Indigenous Advance Ministries.
Indigenous Advance, all right. The first thing I'm thinking of is Native peoples advancing on something. I don't know, what is Indigenous Advance?
Right, so they, even though they're based here in the States, in Memphis, Tennessee, they work mostly in Uganda. And they're doing really great work in a lot of different areas in that country, helping people who have been victims of human trafficking, helping people get out of poverty, into more economic security. All things to advance that culture.
It sounds like a mission, or is it a Christian organization?
It is a Christian ministry, and Indigenous Advance was debanked by Bank of America.
All right, stop a second. Debanked. We talk about it here, but is that a thing? I mean, look, debanking, we've seen it with Nick Vujicic, we've seen it in Nigel Farage and Sam Brownback, and we've had both Nick and Nigel here in the Economic War Room. Yet the media is like looking at us and saying, debanking, that's not even a thing. And they've tried to just downplay it or deny it or whatever, but on Saturday Night Live, recently, they tried to make fun of President Trump. I want you to watch that with me and get your comments on it.
Hasn't lost a step. Trump did have a slight stumble this week while talking about banks, and he introduced an interesting new term called debank.
We're also going to place strong protections to stop banks and regulators from trying to debank you. They want to debank you, and we're going to debank.
I don't know what the hell debank means, but he might have to take D-ambulance to see the doctor.
That is absolutely tone deaf, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, Saturday Night Live ended up being the butt of their own joke because it was quickly pointed out right after that episode aired that yes, debanking is a word, and worse yet, it it is a concept that is being implemented. I mean, a simple Google search in the writer's room would have prevented them from being, hoist on their own petard during that segment. But the most important thing is not whether or not the word exists. Clearly it does. Is it happening? And yes, it is. It happened to Indigenous Advance, as you said. It happened to Sam Brownback. It's happened to multiple people. And trying to make light of it or not pay attention to it at all is part of the problem. It's part of why we're doing what we're doing, to bring attention to the issue, whether it's through shareholder resolutions like we just did at the Bank of America, shareholders meeting, press conferences with clients that have had this happen to them, trying to get to the bottom of what's going on with their bank. And so, yeah, Saturday Night Live, tried to make light of the president, but they ended up sort of being the butt of their own joke.
Well, let's face the reality. 99.999% of the population of America to date hasn't had to deal with the bank kicking them out. It is famous people like Nigel Farage or Sam Brownback, but it's also sympathetic people like Indigenous Advance. I mean, what they're doing sounds amazing and sacrificial and giving and so forth. But the same thing with Nick Vujicic. I mean, here's a guy born without arms and legs that helps people find meaning and purpose in life. Right. He says, if I can find meaning and purpose in life without arms and legs, then surely you have a reason to live. But this isn't a new thing. This happened during the Obama administration. It just happened to a lesser degree. Tell us about Operation Choke Point.
Right. So that, as you said, started in the Obama administration through, I believe, the FDIC, and it was looking at financial transactions of certain entities. And now we've seen it carry forward in the Biden administration through the Treasury Department, which our ADF's Jeremy Tedesco just testified about what was going on with the Treasury Department at the Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government.
Yeah, so we've got what I think is a forerunner to the control of central bank digital currency. It'll go beyond, well, you've spoken out, Nigel Farage, and popularly voted through Brexit, and you're on the winning side of that, but we didn't like it, so we're going to punish you, to the notion that you crossed the street in the wrong spot, a camera picked you up and you're going to lose your bank account, or you happen to be a member of a union and you're going to lose your bank account, or you happen to have gone to the wrong college and you're going to lose your bank account. So these are all very real part of the economic war. We're going to have to take a break. When we come back, I want to dive deeper into that subcommittee and learn how we can prevent this from happening in the future. In uncertain times, finding stability in the economy can feel challenging. But what if you could navigate economic volatility while honoring your biblical values? At Timothy Plan, they believe this balance is possible. Timothy Plan filters its volatility-weighted ETFs and family of mutual funds through a biblical pro-life and pro-family lens, so you can see competitive returns and moral responsibility, helping you to weather the economic storms. With Timothy Plan, align your investments with your values while adapting to our ever-changing culture. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has been recognized leader in biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, your bridge between faith, finances, and the future. Visit timothyplan.com or call 1-800-TIM-PLAN or 1-800-846-7526. Investing includes risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Here's a $10 bill. It's got the picture of Alexander Hamilton on the front of it. You know, it's kind of sad. When I was 10 years old, everything that I could buy for $1 now costs about $10. That's the cost of inflation. It's just paper. It's not backed by anything. You can't exchange it for gold and silver. You used to, but you can't do that anymore. And that's unfortunate. You know, pirates wouldn't accept this. Pirates, they wanted gold and silver. Patriots, the founders of this nation, also wanted gold and silver coin. In fact, they put a provision in the Constitution, 17 words, that said states could only make gold and silver coins tender within the states. That's why I wrote this new book, Pirate Money, Discovering the Founders' Hidden Plan for Economic Justice and Defeating the Great Reset. It will explain exactly the history of money and exactly why gold and silver coins can be made modern with new technology and a useful monetary system. PirateMoneyBook.com. We're speaking with Lathan Watts of Alliance Defending Freedom, and we've been talking about a real problem that you may not have experienced, but is headed your way. And the elite, they want to laugh it off. What we're talking about is losing your bank account. Lathan, what's it mean to a person if they lose their bank account?
Well, I mean, try conducting any sort of business without a bank account. It's access to basic financial services is sort of the coin of the realm, right? I mean, it's really difficult to be a functioning member of society without some sort of access to basic financial services.
Because you can't carry cash and pay everything, and some places won't even take cash anymore.
True. I mean, for Indigenous Advance, it meant they lost their bank account. They had to scramble. It took them a week or two to find another bank. That impacted their payroll to employees who were on the ground in Uganda, helping.
What if they couldn't find another bank? Because the next bank you come along and it says, what I'm hearing you tell me is the government is saying, this looks risky. And so the private bank is saying, wow, we don't want to upset the government, so we're going to go along with that, just like they went along with enforcing all sorts of COVID rules.
Yes, the really tight relationship between banks and federal regulators is really the most dangerous part of this. And that's what we saw at the subcommittee hearing, was that the Treasury Department had gone to the largest banks in the country and basically asked them to basically surveil their customers and look for transactions or interactions with places like Dick's Sporting Goods, Cabela's, purchasing of religious texts, donating.
So you go to the Bible store and you get flagged because you use your MasterCard and they can see it.
Right. Donating to organizations like Alliance Defending Freedom or other mainstream religious or conservative political organizations. And they wanted to flag these because they said this was to identify potential domestic terrorists. And the subcommittee had uncovered this, and that's why they invited us to testify about it.
Okay, I'm not suggesting that this happened at all. In fact, I'm opposed to it. But can you imagine the outcry if a woman went and bought a burqa, or she went and bought a Quran, or she went and bought anything, because we see violence happening on college campuses today.
Certainly. In
protests. And so you say, all right, find out anybody who might be sympathetic with the protesters and debank them, punish them so we can control them. There's no way they get away with that.
Well, and that's the worst part, as I said, when a concentrated power in the government level is working with concentrated power in the private sector to do things that the government couldn't do constitutionally. And that's what we see happening here. And so if government can get away with doing that for people that donate to ADF or that purchase, a Bible and the same week they bought a gun at Cabela's, then they could. They could do it. The next administration may take a bad view of people who purchase this or that and weaponize the government against them. So, any freedom that you want for yourself, you have to be willing to protect for other people, even if you disagree with it.
I think it was the finance minister in Canada under Trudeau who said, if you have given to Trump, you should lose your bank account. And that's the way that you can be a party permanently in power.
Certainly.
And then I don't have any doubt. Do you have any doubt that the left-leaning progressive Biden administration, as soon as they get full power, won't care anything at all about those progressive agenda items?
Well, I mean, there's actually two cases at the Supreme Court this term that dealt with this. You had Murphy versus Missouri, which was about the government asking nicely, that's putting it nicely, the social media companies to censor information related to COVID. You have the NRA versus VULO. The NRA, represented by the ACLU in this case, where the state of New York was pressuring private companies not to do business with the NRA, trying to impact the NRA's ability to advocate for the Second Amendment. So we see it happening.
Yeah, it's strange bedfellows when you've got the ACLU and the NRA on the same side.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But occasionally, and you've been around a while, occasionally the ACLU does step up and stand up for principles. And sometimes they give in, but sometimes they stand up for the principles.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as they should in this case. I mean, it's tough to advocate for the Second Amendment without the First Amendment.
Yeah.
Right? And that's basically when you've got government outsourcing censorship to the private sector. They should not be able to get away with that.
This is where you've got, like, Dr. Jordan Peterson was at those same hearings. And you can go, we'll put the link to the hearings in our battle plan so everybody can go and watch. Jeremy Tedesco did a great job explaining it. But Jordan Peterson did too. I mean, here you've got somebody that is respected around the world, and yet his own government in Canada is demanding that he go to a re-education camp.
Yeah, literally, I mean, that's the term they're using. He needs to be re-educated. And I think, a big part of his testimony there was as a cautionary tale to America. This is what's happening in my country, just north of you. Do not let it happen here. And as you said, I mean, he's well-respected, known around the world. If it can happen to him, what chance does the average small business owner stand if he goes in for a small business loan from his bank and they don't like his most recent social media post?
Yeah. And so if you can't post, you can't speak. If you can't speak, then you have to put up with whatever is being spoken at you. The Soviet Union, it was very prominent. People would go home and they would talk quietly over the dinner table. And so that's why they tried to enlist the kids to listen into the parents' conversations and turn them. That's what Hitler Youth did, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's, as I said, what that hearing highlighted was the government basically outsourcing to the private sector what it's prohibited from doing by the Constitution.
But haven't we got court rulings on that you're not supposed to be able to do that?
Well, as I said, there's 2 cases at the court this term, and hopefully those opinions will come out probably by the end of June that will address this. We'll have to wait and see, how the court rules in those cases. But it shouldn't matter, honestly, if the government is working with big tech, big finance, and because with the regulatory state, particularly with banks, you have the carrot and the stick. You have the regulatory burden that they can apply to banks to coerce them to do this. They also have the carrot end of that, which is if you're a bank that's too big to fail, where do you go for the bailout? You go to the federal government. And it really shouldn't matter if the people in the private sector are being coerced into doing it or they're willing co-conspirators. That's the federal government getting around the Constitution by, as I said, outsourcing it to the private sector, and they should not be allowed to get away with that in this country.
Yeah, no, it's very dangerous because the federal government often makes very bad decisions, as we saw with the Community Reinvestment Act and the impact that had on the banking system. And when they control the bank, they control the people, and that's why we don't need that. All right, we're going to take another break. When we come back, let's talk some solutions and what do people do when they're in trouble.
Oh, hi. I'm Kevin Sorb, and I'm here to tell you about coffee. Well, not really, but I'm going to use coffee to illustrate my point. Here we have several different coffees, each with its own unique characteristics. First, we have instant coffee. This coffee pretends to be coffee, but it's not really coffee at all. It's a fraud. Plus, it tastes terrible. I'm out. Next, we have woke coffee. Their coffee actually tastes pretty good, until you find out that when you drink it, you have to admit that you've oppressed other coffees in the past. Insanity, I'm out. Next, we have Big Tech Coffee. Now, these guys used to encourage folks to share with others what they thought about their coffee. But now, if you say you don't like Big Tech Coffee, they'll take away your coffee pot. I'm out. And this brings us to Patriot Mobile Coffee, right? This is one big cup of truth and freedom. There's no fraud here. Patriot Mobile is America's real Christian conservative wireless provider. Patriot Mobile gives back millions of dollars every year to organizations that are on the front lines fighting for our freedoms. Patriot Mobile offers the best nationwide 4G and 5G coverage on the same networks as the other major carriers. So you'll get the same great coverage, along with 100% US-based customer support, while knowing you are supporting a company that shares your conservative values. Switch to Patriot Mobile today by visiting patriotmobile.com or call 972-PATRIOT.
Lathan, we've been talking about government colluding with private industry, and the left will always point out and say, you people on the right believe in free markets and private industry rights and all this, and now you're denying them Twitter, their private industry rights to have who they want to on the platform. And of course, Elon comes along, buys Twitter, releases the Twitter files, and realizes, hey, the government was telling them what to do, and they were doing it. This should be completely unconstitutional by any definition. The government should not be able to pay people to do what they are not allowed to do themselves. So what do people do when they're facing that on their own? You're a head of an organization and you see this happening to you. Where do they turn?
Well, they can certainly ask us for help, and we're certainly ready, willing, and able.
That's Alliance Defending
Alliance
Freedom.
Defending Freedom. You go to our website, adflegal.org.
Okay.
Another thing you can do is arm yourself with information. Our corporate engagement team has a tool called the Viewpoint Diversity Index, and it measures companies on how they treat viewpoint diversity in their employees, their shareholders, their customers, their clients.
Will you send me that link? We'll put it in our battle plan.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Viewpointdiversityscore.org. It's a bit of a mouthful, but we'll make sure that you have the link.
Okay.
And actually, the third version of that score is getting ready to come out very soon. So you can see it focuses on mostly big finance and big tech companies, because that's where the concentration of power that is able to impact people's daily lives the most. That's where we see it. And so you can arm yourself with information that way. Another thing that I know you're passionate about is know where your money is invested. If you're a shareholder in a company like Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo, this handful of really big banks control over half the deposit accounts in the country. And so you need to know where your money's invested. If you're a shareholder, you can support shareholder resolutions like the one we had.
Vote your proxies. Tell your financial advisor to vote those proxies.
Absolutely. And then I think you should also we should also commend good policy when it's made. The state of Tennessee, first state in the country, because Indigenous Advance is located in Memphis, first state in the country to pass a debanking bill, which stops banks from making decisions based on religious viewpoint, political ideology, race, sex, all of these things. And other states should get on board with this too.
What scares me though is you mentioned that, all right, so a bank ought to be able to look at their customer and their credit worthiness and make a decision based on that to whether I give you a loan or not. But when you do that, I fear, like they did with Sheets, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and said, hey, you're doing background checks on your employees, which used to be just standard practice. Do they have a criminal record and so forth before you hire somebody? And they're getting in trouble for that.
Yeah, I mean, with like the bill in Tennessee, it applies to the largest banks, people with $100 billion in assets or above. So your local community bank is not impacted by that law. And certainly banks have to have the ability to make business decisions based on, as you said, like economic viability. I mean, what banks do.
Right.
But what we've seen, 7 of the 10 largest banks in the country have these really vague terms of service with terms like reputational risk, or that they won't do business with things that promote hate or intolerance. Well, how do you define hate? How do you define intolerance? What is reputational risk? That if you do business with someone...
SPLC is how they define it.
Unfortunately, yes. And so they sort of hide behind these vague terms of service to say, well, we think you're a risk to our reputation, so we're closing your account.
And then they go to another party and say, hey, you should do a write-up on Alliance Defending Freedom and look to see if they're a hate group. And lo and behold, you've defended a Christian somewhere, and that Christian happened to have said one time that marriage is between a man and a woman. So it's just a chain of control.
Certainly. And I mean, we've seen this over and over and over again with groups like the SPLC. They define a hate group as anybody they disagree with.
Yeah.
And that's what our point of view on viewpoint diversity.
Which is the end of the argument. If you have with your kids and they're, well, I hate you. At that point, that's the end of the argument. You've lost the argument and you're just lashing out instead of actually defining you've done this contrary to the law or you've done this that's societally objectionable. Here's what bothers me the most about this, though. It's like a cancer in that you don't know that they're monitoring your financial transactions until you lose your bank accounts.
Right.
And so we've got to stop it at the beginning, not just at the end.
Yeah, and there needs to be greater transparency in the relationship between particularly the federal government and the banks. They are so closely regulated, but it's so shrouded in bank privacy that it's hard to know. It's hard to get an explanation from the bank as to why did my account get closed.
We need to flip the economics. I mean, we're in the economic war room. Everything we're talking about is a form of economic warfare. We're going to use economics to make you agree with what we want you to agree with. To flip that script is we need the bank that says, hey, look, the government's not going to tell us what to do. We're going to do what's best for our shareholders. I'll tell you, people would flood to remember Chick-fil-A.
Absolutely.
We don't care what you say. Just because our founders happen to be a part of a Bible study and people flooded, Chick-fil-A now outsells a Starbucks, a Subway, and a McDonald's combined. Chick-fil-A in 6 days outdoes what they do in 7 days combined.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those rare opportunities, it seems, where doing the right thing would actually be a really good market opportunity as well.
And we need to convince banks of that. We also need to do a few other things. Well, Lathan, thank you for the good work you're doing at Alliance Defending Freedom. We'll put all the information on how to reach you, and people should support the good work. You're a nonprofit and you can take donations, right?
Absolutely. We operate as a nonprofit so that our clients never get a bill for the services.
That's amazing. All right, Alliance Defending Freedom is a tremendous organization, and they've stepped up for Indigenous Advance and so many others. And they're actually helping to protect you by highlighting these, having Jeremy Tedesco go to the hearings and make it known. That's one of the critical things, is to make this information known. We have another solution, pirate money. You can learn about that at economicwarroom.com, where you could have money in gold and silver. That's one of the solutions. But you also need to find a bank that lines up with your values. These are the things that we talk about week in and week out in the Economic War Room. And we're going to summarize all of this. So where you can learn about Alliance Defending Freedom, you can learn about Indigenous Advance, you can learn about Operation Choke Point and all that. That'll be in our free economic battle plan, and you can get your copy at economicwarroom.com. You need to remember, what we see as a marketplace, our enemies view it as a battle space. This is your opportunity to step up and help us win the economic war. This is Kevin Freeman from the Economic War Room.